family started making wine, producing Malbec, this variety that is today famous from Argentina, but was actually relatively unknown in the world in the 1990s when my father sort of got got our wines out to the world and made it famous. But the first Malbec was planted by my great grandfather who came to Argentina from Italy, and his name was Nicola Catena, and that was in 1902. And that's why I'm the fourth generation of the family. And at some point, I would actually like to know of the Italian history behind Pignettos, the restaurant where we're having dinner tonight, because I always like to hear the stories of Italians all over the world. So my great grandfather planted his first vines in 1902. Then my grandfather continued to make wine and plant vineyards. But it was really my father who had this vision of making Argentine wines that could stand with the best of the world. And I'm going to tell you the rest of that story as we drink. So let me go ahead and share the presentation. Is that okay, Jorge? Should I start?
Yes. Yeah, you can start.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So these are some beautiful grapes from Mendoza. And right now in Mendoza, it's winter. And we actually just had some beautiful snowy days. There was snow in the vineyards, snow in the mountains. And it can be really cold there, but usually it's always sunny. I think you have some weather like that sometimes in Texas also, very sunny and a little cold in the winter. So, okay, let me just, okay, there we go. So this is my Italian family, my great-grandfather in the center with his wife, Anna. And the one to the left of them, the oldest one, is my grandfather, who I call Nonno. That's how the Italians call their grandparents. And I like to show this picture because there's an interesting story to tell. In the Italian tradition, it was always, you know, a man following a man, following a man, following a man in working at the family winery. And I asked my father about this photograph, and he said that his grandfather, Nicola, the guy in the center, was always very proud to say that he had left a winery and a vineyard to each one of his sons. And so I asked, well, what did he leave for his daughters? And he said, well, he was equally as proud to have found a good husband for each one of the daughters. And so I said to my dad, well, I found my own husband, and so I want a winery and a vineyard. And here I am working along with my brother and my sister and my father. And I don't think my great-grandfather Nicola could have either pictured that I'd be the winery's director, or that I would be talking to a group of people in Texas at an Italian restaurant in Texas. I don't think he could have imagined that either, that we would be selling wine all over the world, 70 countries, and that Catena and Malbec and the wines of Argentina would be so well known outside of Argentina. So this is my father here in the picture in Mendoza. He's the one to the left. He grew up in a tiny, tiny little village. He went to school on a horse, and he had one great advantage in life, and that was his family, and especially his mother and his father. His father was just a very loving person. My grandfather was just the most incredible man, but he also had a wonderful mother, Angelica Zapata, the lady in the middle, and she was the headmaster at the local school. Here she is with all her students. And Angelica believed that the path to improvement of any country was education. And she believed fiercely that every child should be educated. At that time in Argentina, many of the children were very young and didn't go to school because they were kept home to work. And she would go get the kids and bring them to school and convince the parents that they should get an education. And so this is why my father grew up with a very, broad understanding of the world, great ambitions. She was also very strict with all her kids in terms of their education, both her daughters and her sons. And she believed that women had as much great potential as men. And we actually have a foundation that we started in her name that works really hard with education in all the local rural communities in Argentina. I don't know, Jorge, are they starting to drink some of the wines? Because I would hate for them not to have wine in their glass.
We can jump. I mean, I know in the PowerPoint the wines are lower, are like in
Yeah.
a slide. But if you want to tell them about the Chardonnay, um,
I think that when I talk and people aren't drinking wine, everything's boring. And if they're drinking wine, it's fun.
no, I know. That's the key to keep them happy.
So please, everybody, my friends, let's start drinking the Chardonnay, and please feel free to eat your food. All I can see is there's somebody having a wonderful cheese plate. I believe what's his name? They're having this wonderful cheese plate outside, and I thought it looked wonderful. So
Patrick,
please, Patrick, that's
Patrick's.
right, Patrick. So please keep on having your food and your wine, and listen as much as you can. But otherwise, enjoy each other. I am just kind of jealous of our friends at Pignetti's, because I haven't yet been to a restaurant since the quarantine. So I'm celebrating for you and with you, and a little bit envious that I cannot be there. But at least I'm enjoying watching you, sitting there together and enjoying each other. That's just wonderful. So just to tell you a little bit about Argentina, you know, there's great people in Argentina, but it's also kind of a crazy country. So what my father and my grandfather and my great grandfather were able to achieve is rather extraordinary. This is just one of the little things that happened to us in Argentina. In the 1990s, when my father started his revolution of Argentine wine, we had almost 1,000% inflation. That would be like, owning a store or restaurant and having to change your prices every day. Imagine, how crazy that would be. We also had a military government, and that's part of the reason why I ended up coming to the US with my family for a few years, and then staying and deciding to study medicine. I'll tell you a little more about that later. But when I was a child in Argentina, it was a fairly dangerous place to live in. There were shootings, bombs, kidnappings, and but I think that today we are seeing this great epidemic in the world, and we are seeing how resilient people are, because there's not a single corner of the world that's not having hardship, yet people are uniting, families are uniting. And when people ask me what was it like to grow up in Argentina under those conditions, I always said, I had my family, and I sort of didn't know anything else. And I think that I don't think anybody could have imagined what we're going through right now, what you're going through right now. But we're all figuring out how to support each other. And for me, as a doctor, and as a parent, as a daughter, I am just amazed to watch my friends, my family, my coworkers, all trying to support each other. And sometimes it's in the most moments of the greatest hardship that you see the most beautiful things in people, despite all the sadness and the worry. Um, there was also a time when we had, five presidents all in one week because of the instability. And this is what, some of the streets would look like when I was a child. So in the early 80s, my father decided to come to the US. He went to Columbia University in the 70s, and has a PhD in economics. And my uncle had been kidnapped, so he was very worried about the safety of our family. So he was invited to UC Berkeley as a visiting scholar, and he decided to take all of us to Berkeley, California, and to kind of commute back and forth to Argentina and manage the winery through fax and phone. And while my father was, changing everything about how wine was made by our family and in Argentina, I had become, a typical Berkeley student, with my flower in my hair. And it was a crazy contrast, because in Argentina, I went to a very, academic public school, but since it was military government, it was almost run like a military school. And you could imagine the difference there was between my military school in Argentina and the school in Berkeley in California. And you know, what I have loved ever since about the United States is you know, this freedom, the democracy that you have. And you know, I will always support that in Argentina, whatever the government, whatever they do, that they are a democratically elected government. I think that is something so strong in the United States, and the United States has really inspired the rest of the world in so many ways. So when my father was in California, he would go visit the Napa Valley where he met Mr. Robert Mondavi. And he also heard about this famous Judgment of Paris that some of you might know about or not, from 1976. And this was a tasting organized by an English sommelier, a very famous English personality in wine, where he invited French judges to taste blind California wines and some of the most famous French wines. And does anybody in the room, I don't know if they can say something, does anybody know whether the French wines or the Californian wines won? Anybody want to say? Or maybe we can look in the chat.
California wines.
Did somebody think that France won?
It was the Californians.
It was the Californians, exactly. And now you're making wine in Texas. And I actually had a wine from Texas that somebody brought to our winery, and I thought it was really delicious. You also have some of the high altitude places. So yeah, it was the Californians that won. And so Mr. Mondavi was on this, you know, tour around the country comparing the best French wines to the Californian wines. There was the Judgment of Paris, and really it was this tasting that spearheaded, you know, this renaissance, this revolution in California, you know, in the Napa Valley, to make Californian wines that could stand with the best of the world. And my father said, if the Californians can do it, why not me in Argentina? And you know, you might think, okay, why not? But at that time, you know, it was the 80s when Chile was selling a lot of really inexpensive wine. And for an Argentinian to say, I'm going to make wines as good as the best of the world in Argentina was completely insane. He was told that he was crazy, that he would, you know, go bankrupt, and that it was a ridiculous idea. But my father was convinced because both his father and his grandfather had come from Europe, and they would always travel and say, listen, the wines of Argentina are really good. And in fact, Argentina at that time was the fourth largest producer of wine in the world. We were making, you know, more wine than Chile, and mostly we were drinking it ourselves instead of exporting it. And so my father believed that we had the place and the kind of climate that we needed to make great wines. And, you know, he decided to do it. A very gutsy thing, and I'm very grateful for that. And so a little bit of myself, on the picture to the left, it's my father and me at the New York Wine Experience, and then it's me as a speaker. And, you know, oftentimes people ask me, well, how is it that you went from being a medical doctor to a winemaker and following your father in the family winery? And I can tell you that when I went to college, I went to Harvard undergrad, Stanford Med School, I was all about medicine. I wanted to save the world. I wanted to do new discoveries in medicine. I wanted to do everything I could to help people with their health. And what I didn't realize was that actually making wine would have also been a way to help people. Not just because, you know, wine in moderation is very good for your health. There's been studies showing a 30% reduction in strokes, heart attacks, dementia. People who drink wine in moderation can also control better their sugars if they're diabetic. So wine is a very healthy beverage when consumed in moderation. And also wine makes you smile more. I'm sure everybody is smiling right now. And there's actually a study that was done that people who drink wine smile more. And smiling makes you healthier. But at that time when I studied medicine, I didn't realize that making wine could help a lot of people, and not just because of the health benefits and the enjoyment of wine, but also our region, Argentina, was very poor when I was a child because, you know, of all this economic instability and all these things happening in Argentina. And the wine industry has really elevated the lives of millions of people because there's jobs, there's the people who work in the vineyards of the winery. And when I go back to Argentina now, the roads are paved, the schools are painted, you can see gardens everywhere, and people are so much happier because they're meeting their economic needs. And I'm sure some of you here tonight run your own businesses or work for a business, and one of the big lessons I learned was that when you run a responsible business and you give jobs to people, you are helping their health and their happiness, and it's very, very important work. Just as important as perhaps being a doctor or nurse or being in healthcare. But this New York wine experience that is on the slide here was kind of my turning point. And I had spent a lot of time with my father as his translator in France. We used to go to France together to taste wine, but I was going as a consumer, thinking I would enjoy, a week with my father in France and help him with the translation from the French, because I studied French in school. But so I'd fallen in love with wine as a consumer, but I never thought I'd be working with my dad. I thought I'd be drinking the family's wines. But in 1994, we got invited to the New York Wine Experience, which is a very prestigious tasting in New York. It's run by the Wine Spectator. And we were the first South American winery to be invited. And my father was very concerned that nobody at the winery spoke English well. And so he asked me, please, Laurita, that's what my dad calls me, would you go to represent us? And I said, well, but Papa, I know our wines, but are you sure that I'm the right person? And he said, yes, you're the only one. And so I got on a plane. I had actually just finished my medical residency in emergency medicine, and I went to New York. And I was standing in my booth, just like here I am with my father, but I was all alone. And I would have people walk by and look at the sign that said, Argentina, and they didn't know Argentinian wine. So they would just keep on walking. And there would be these long lines, behind the Californian wineries, the French wineries, the Italian wineries, and very few people coming to my booth. And all of a sudden I realized that this dream that my father had to put Argentine wine on the world map was going to be very difficult and maybe impossible. And so I called my father and I said, I got my first job as a doctor, but I also want to come and work with you. And ever since, and this was in 1995, was the New York Wine Experience, I've been working, doing both things. So this was my moment. And now when I go to the New York Wine Experience, usually my father comes with me because he has been named, he's received the Distinguished Service Award. So they always do this special celebration where he sits in the table with some of the most famous names in wine. And so I can usually convince him to come with me, which is a lot more fun than going alone. And now we have long lines, finally, at our booth. Jorge has been many times, and it's quite tiring. Yeah, but sometimes I wish we could go back to fewer people because it's quite tiring. So this is Fernando Ucema, and this is a picture of the Catena Institute, our research institute, where we study everything about the vineyards and winemaking. And this is a group of our researchers at the Institute. And one of the first things, that I questioned about winemaking was, is it an art or a science? And, it's both because, the winemaker, the blending, understanding a vineyard has a lot of art in it. If you're an experienced farmer, you look at your vineyard, if it needs water, if it needs compost, if it needs pruning, and you don't need to do any research to know so many things about the vineyard. And you're following your fathers and your grandfathers and, things that you've learned, just through oral tradition. But what I realized was that if we wanted to make this big leap into, the top of the world in wine, we needed to really understand everything about our soil, about our plant selections, about how we were making wine so that we could make the best wine. A wine that could stand with some of the best. One of the things my father first taught me, because, I came to work with him and I had a medical degree and I understood science and I could do research. And, I'd had some pretty good wines up to then because, drinking expensive wine back then was a lot easier. They were a lot less expensive. So I had, you know, I had developed my palate. But you know, I really didn't know anything about selling wine. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, you know, I don't really know anything about what you're doing. And he said, listen, there's a very simple recipe. Don't listen to those people that say you have to learn marketing. There's nothing to marketing. The best thing is to just make the best wine. And if you can make a wine that's as good as the wines that sell for $40 and sell it for $20, or make, you know, a wine that's as good as the $20 wines and sell it for 10, you will win. This is the easiest way to win the consumer's heart, is by making just a really, really good, delicious, delicious wine. And honestly, I don't think I've ever learned anything more important than what I learned back then. And to make these great wines, we needed to understand in depth everything about our vineyards. So I founded the Catena Institute of Wine in 1995. And, you know, it's become a leading organization in wine research and wine learning in the world. And I'll tell you more about it later. And our philosophy, our vision is to use science to preserve nature and culture. So we're doing a lot of work on sustainability, on climate change, on preserving our whole culture of winemaking, but also on the people that support winemaking in our region. We need to make sure those people are well, and that they're understanding how to farm for the highest quality, because otherwise we will not be able to preserve our way of life in the vineyards, in the countryside. So one of the things that was a big breakthrough for my father, and you can see here, this is what actually the mountain was looking like recently in Mendoza, is that people think of Mendoza as a warm area. And it's actually got some warm areas, but it's got a lot of cool climate. And to make an age-worthy wine, a really good wine, it can't be too warm, because if it's too warm, you're going to ripen too quickly. You're going to have just a lot of sugar, a lot of alcohol, and you're not going to have, you know, beautiful texture, beautiful aromatics. The wines are going to be very simple. It's going to be high production of not very interesting wine. And so if you want to make an age-worthy wine, you know, a wine that's unforgettable and a wine of substance, you need to go to cooler climates. And this cartoon here is from my book, Gold in the Vineyards. Does anybody have the book there? Jorge, do you have it that you could show it?
No, I don't.
So this is a book I want to tell you a little bit more about as we go. But
I don't know if they can see me because of the PowerPoint, but I can,
okay. We'll
show it later.
We'll show it later. But this is a cartoon from my book that I just published. And it's basically my father talking to his viticulturist, who says, hey, this place where you want to plant vineyards is too cold. And my father says, I want to see what's the limit of cold. And it turned out that this place that today is called the Adriana Vineyard, that has been very well recognized. We have several 100 points wines from this vineyard. Can you still hear me? You hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So it turns out that my father did make the right decision, but everybody was telling him it would be too cold here. But because we have so much sunlight, the grapes could still ripen. And that's why if you're tasting our wines, you'll see that, you know, they're not underripe, but they have a lot of freshness, a lot of floral aromatics, and they don't have too much alcohol, which is, you know, what I consider, you know, an important element to make a very elegant wine that can age well. So a little bit about the formation of the soils. And Jorge, should we maybe pour the next wine? Are they still drinking their first wine?
I'm not sure. Amy, are you there? Or can you talk to me back? They can actually, you can feel free to taste the wines, and in a few minutes, we're gonna go over all the technical stuff about each wine.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've been drinking it.
They
pre-pour all the glasses, Laura.
I poured the first three wines, the Malbec, the Catena, and the Chardonnay, but I have not poured the Zapata, and I'll wait until you tell me to do that. But so the most of them have finished the Chardonnay and are starting to sip on the Malbec with the empanadas, beef and corn empanadas.
Ooh, so envious. Clinton, I want to be eating empanadas too. I want to hear from our guests how the empanadas are. Wait, Clinton, go ask him about the empanadas and come back to me. Ask him about the pairing, empanadas and Malbec. I want to know.
Everybody loves the food and the wine, of course. All right, I'm gonna mute. Jorge, I'm gonna go back on mute unless you need
No,
anything
I
else.
don't want to mute. I want to hear from. It's okay. I want to hear the noise. It's good. It's good. Wait a minute, Amy.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. They're all
What did
enjoying
they
the
say?
empanadas with the wine. So they're gonna probably start. They're all starting to hit the Malbec now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, this is a perfect moment. So yeah, you can mute it now if you want, Clint. Oh, or it's okay. Okay. So this is a little bit about the soils in Argentina. So, you know, there is a word in French called terroir that there is really no word in English for terroir. And that means it's the magical combination between soil and climate that gives you a special taste of place in a wine. And, you know, when I first started making wine and I went to France, the French people were often telling me, oh, you know, France is the only one that has terroir. You know, other countries don't have terroir. And that's definitely not true. And I don't think the French think it anymore. But, you know, in the California, they discovered that California had all these different terroirs, different regions that gave different flavors. And in Mendoza, we have different terroirs because of the alluvial soils. And alluvial soils, that means that the soils were formed by the glaciers as they melted. So 120 million years ago, the two plates in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, started clashing, and then the Andes formed. And then during the Ice Age, the Andes were covered in snow. And as the snow melted, they left the heavier stones further up. And then as it went down, more sands and loams, and then clays at the lower parts. And this is very important because in each one of the different areas, it's a different composition of the soil that gives different flavors. And this is, I think, a big part of the diversity of flavors that we can use for blends or as single vineyards or single parcel wines that is special to Argentina. And this is a chart just to explain how varied the climate is in a very short distance. So if you look all the way to the right, you see Burgundy and Champagne, Bordeaux and Barolo, Napa Valley and Chianti Classico, Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So region 1, and all the way to the left, you see region 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it goes from cooler to warmer. So this was done by somebody at UC Davis, Professor Winkler, to help wine producers or viticulturalists decide which varieties to plant where. So usually varieties like Chardonnay and Pinot Noir do better in cooler climates, and you know, Syrah is a variety that can do well in somewhat warmer climates. And so when we went to study the climate in Mendoza, we found that we had from zone 1 to zone 4 in just like, you know, 60 miles distance, you know, which is, you know, not you know, maybe a little more. It would be, you know, about 60 miles from zone 1 to zone 4. Whereas in France, if you wanted to go from Burgundy to Châteauneuf-du-Pape, you know, you're talking about, I don't know, 400 miles. You know, it's much farther away. And so that's why we can do these microclimate blends from the different altitudes, and we can make a wine like Catena, which you're drinking now. And I think I'm going to skip, are we having the Catena Alta Malbec? Is that what they were drinking?
Yes, that's the third wine that they were having.
Okay, so let's talk about this, and then we're going to go back to the Chardonnay. So the Catena Alta is a blend of 5 different sets of historic rows. So these are historic rows within our family vineyards. And when I say historic rows, I mean the rows, the parcel that year in and year out always give us the best fruit. And so we always make a blend from the same historic rows for this wine. And if you think about it, you've got, you know, you're going from 900 meters elevation to up to 1,500 meters elevation. So it's very different in altitude, but the plant selections are the same. And when you make this blend, you get a wine that has, you know, florals, minerality, good texture, black fruits, red fruits, and it makes it a wine with a lot of texture and a lot to give. And this is what I love about making wine in Mendoza, in my region, in this mountain region, because we can make these high altitude blends. And this is not something that can be done in other parts of the world. Let's go back to the Chardonnay. So I would love, if people still have a little Chardonnay in their glass, for them to taste the Chardonnay with the empanada. And then I want Clinton to ask again, because you know, the Catena Alta Chardonnay is just such a textured wine, and it has this beautiful mineral and peach and lemony aromatics, but also just a great texture. And I always challenge people to have it with meat, because people often think that Chardonnay should only be with fish or you know, with a pasta or with a risotto. And I think they're surprised to see how well it goes with meat. So is Clinton or Amy around that they could oh yeah, there's Clinton. So Clinton, do you think you could ask them to taste the empanadas with the Chardonnay just to see what they think?
Yeah. No, I had it. ¿Cómo le gustaron las empanadas con el Chardonnay? I think they loved. They had the corn empanadas with the Chardonnay and beef side by side. They were able to get a little bit of both experiences with the Chardonnay, and now starting to touch into the Malbec. And then we have the Cabernet and then the Zapata last.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I'd love to do, you know, interesting pairings with the Catena Alta Chardonnay, because I think it's a wine that can go with a lot of different foods. And I also think that Catena Alta Malbec can go with foods that are more traditionally for white wine. Like I think Catena Alta Malbec, you know, with a shrimp dish or maybe with salmon or with a risotto can also go really well. And the Catena Alta Chardonnay that you had first is a blend from 2 vineyards at high altitude, these limestone soils, wild yeasts. You know, it's just a wine that keeps on giving. You know, it has such length. I just love that wine. And the Catena Alta Malbec, I already talked about. I just want to show them a map. Okay, so this is a map to explain the different kind of aromatics and flavors that come from all the different altitudes. So, you know, you look at the top, you see Gualtajari, that's, you know, 1,500 meters, which is about almost 5,000 feet elevation. Then you go, you know, to about a little over 3,000. You just multiply by 3 the meters and you get the feet approximately. And then Lulunta is a little lower. And what you see where it says floral, flowers, freshness, at each altitude, there's one element that's the strongest. And when you blend all that together, you get this really beautiful wine that is both elegant, ripe, very complex, and both, you know, the Malbec ages really, really beautifully. And I think you're having also the Catena Alta Cabernet, is that right?
Yes. They're going to have the Catena Alta Cabernet, and then after that, they will have the Nicolas. The Nicolas is the last one.
Okay,
Correct.
so Clinton, should we talk about the Catena Alta Cabernet or not yet?
Yeah, the Alta, absolutely. So the third wine you have in your glass currently is the Alta Cabernet, which she's going to talk about.
Okay. So, you know, people hear a lot about Malbec in Argentina, and Malbec, it has just this very, very long history in Argentina. But Cabernet also has a long history in Argentina and was brought to Argentina at the same time as Malbec. And our family really loves Cabernet. We have spent a lot of effort and study figuring out the best places to grow Cabernet, how to grow it for quality in our particular mountain climate. And the other reason why we spend a lot of time on Cabernet is that my father is obsessed with Cabernet. He loves the best, you know, California Cabernets. He loves to drink Bordeaux. And he's always said that he wants to, you know, not only make a great Malbec, which is what we're known for, but also a Cabernet. And so because, you know, the winemakers, the viticulturists, and myself, we're always trying to please my dad, we are also working really hard to make a great Cabernet. And this Cabernet is made with the same methodology as the Malbec, which is, you know, these special lots, these historic lots, from 5 different vineyards at different altitudes, going from, you know, around 3,000 to 5,000 feet elevation. And maybe Clinton could show, Clinton, could you put the bottle on the table? Because I want to tell them a little bit about the pyramid drawing. So maybe you could show them some of the bottles. So you're going to notice on the label a pyramid. So you're going to wonder, like, what is a pyramid doing in Argentina? You know, we're not in Egypt. I have to say, I've been to Egypt. I don't know if anybody here has been to Egypt, but the pyramids in Egypt are pretty incredible. But the inspiration for this pyramid was actually the Mayan pyramids of Central America. And when my father was looking for a kind of inspiration for our winery, so we had a family winery that's, you know, like 100 years old in the eastern part of Mendoza. But when my father started planting vineyards, you know, in the 80s and 90s in the cooler climate, he needed to have a winery, you know, closer to where all the vineyards were. And so he had to build a new winery. And at first he thought, well, maybe I'll build something Italian because, you know, we have this Italian heritage. We also have Spanish heritage. That's the Zapata part of the name is of Spanish heritage. And so he thought maybe we should do like a, you know, a colonial style building, kind of like, you know, the Mondavi winery is following this, you know, sort of Spanish mission. I'm not sure what the style is called, but that kind of architecture. But he kept on thinking that because we have this very different place where we farm by the mountains that doesn't exist anywhere else, such an important region that is all dependent on the mountains, he thought that he should do something different. And he happened to have been to Central America on a trip, and he loved the Mayan pyramids. And, you know, the Mayans were a very advanced civilization. They had a language, they understood they had a calendar, they understood math, they understood the stars and how, you know, the stars and the sun related to the passing of the days and the farming calendar. And so he took inspiration in the Mayan pyramids, although the Mayans actually never made it to Argentina because the native Indians of Argentina were more like they were nomads. They didn't have these big civilizations like they had in Central America. But my dad took inspiration in the Mayan pyramids to do something that would be genuinely, you know, Latin American for the inspiration. And that's why we have our winery is a pyramid, and it's really beautiful. Has anybody in the room been to Mendoza, to Argentina? Clinton, can I see a raise of hands from the group?
Who's been to Mendoza? Who's been to Mendoza? Show of hands.
Clinton,
Just me?
Just me. Just us there.
You been to Mendoza?
so just Clinton and Amy.
Argentina?
Argentina.
Oh, he's just waving. What we
There are
got?
a few.
Just the two of us.
We got a speaker.
Patrick and Gina have been.
Oh, Patrick, okay. And Gina, they're having that great cheese plate.
And a couple of them are on the list. They've already signed up to be on the list to go with me. To
They have to be on the list with Clinton. You will have a great time if you come. So especially Texans, I know you are very excited about your steaks. And we're pretty good at barbecue in Argentina too. Although I have to tell you a story that, you know, I actually don't eat a ton of meat, but I eat some meat. But I always used to say that the best, you know, steak in the world is Argentinian because, you know, I'm used to it. I grew up with it. And, you know, but then I went to Texas and I had some of your steak and, you know, I'm kind of embarrassed to say, I think I've had better steak in Texas than in Argentina, but please don't tell any of my friends or my family or anybody in Argentina. I might actually get fired from the country, passport taken away.
This is being recorded.
Yeah, don't share this recording. Because, you know, the thing is that the beef in Argentina is very lean because it's grass fed. And, but I like a little fat in my steak. I mean, I'm sorry, you know, I know I'm a doctor and I'm preaching healthy habits, but I would rather have a smaller piece of steak with a little more fat. I don't know how you feel about that. So I really love Texas steak, and every time I'm in Texas, I break all my rules about not eating too much meat, and I have meat every day, but it's worth it. So, okay, so let's keep on going. So that was the map with the different flavors. Clinton, does anybody have any questions, or you think I'm doing okay with the explanations?
Anyone, questions right now? Before we go to the Nicolas Catena Zapata, kind of the premier wine? Or one of the premier wines? The question was, when are we going to Argentina?
Yes, that is actually the only important question.
That was a good question.
The good question. Yeah, that's all. The only question I need, and that's up to Clinton. Well, actually,
Not soon enough would be the answer, but
yeah. Well, actually, right
I was
now,
supposed to be there in April and it got canceled.
Oh,
So.
I know. Well, the thing is, Argentina actually closed the country fairly early, so we have very few cases of COVID. Like Argentina, what's going on in Brazil. Argentina is very controlled, and they've actually banned all travel in or out of Argentina by plane until September, which seems very extreme. But some people in Argentina are saying, well, we should open up more like other parts of the world. But the issue is the Argentine culture is like everybody's hugging and kissing, and I don't know that people are going to be able to social distance. So I'm following what the government's doing at the winery. We're still allowed to make wine, and we are providing masks and a lot of precautions because they are my essential workers, the people working in the vineyards and the winery, and I want to do everything I can to keep them safe because they're coming to work every day. But we need our wine, and they are very committed. We actually haven't had a single person miss work at the winery, even from the first day when everybody was so scared, because they understand how important their job is. They're providing wine and sustenance to people all over the world. So if you were to ask anybody at my winery right now, are you scared? They'd say, yeah, I'm a little scared, but we got to make our good Argentinian wine for Clinton in Texas.
It's got 10 minutes. I gave a 10-minute warning.
10-minute warning. Okay, just one thing, the sunlight. The sunlight is very important because of the intense mountain sun, the grapes have more thickness in their skin and more polyphenols, and that's why our wines are very concentrated and age-worthy. Okay, 10-minute warning.
We're pouring the Nicolas Catena Zapata.
Oh,
right.
yes, let's go to that. Okay, we're going to skip a couple things, and we are going to go to, where's my dad? Where's the picture with my dad? Am I missing the picture with my dad? Oh my God, I'm missing the picture with my dad. I wanted to show you a picture with my, oh, you already saw the picture with my dad. Okay, so the Nicolas Catena Zapata was the first sort of, Grand Cru wine made from Argentina. It was the first to go out there, and the first vintage was 1997 and compete in blind tastings. It actually has higher Parker ratings than, several of the first growths. It's a very highly rated wine. It's a Cabernet Malbec blend, and you're drinking the 15, right? Is that right? So the 15 has a little bit of Cabernet Franc, but no, that's the 16. So the 15 is 83% Cabernet Sauvignon and 17% Malbec. And I highly recommend that you age this wine. That you buy a case maybe and keep a couple bottles for the future. This wine ages so beautifully. The wines from the 90s are incredible. This is a really good wine to keep in your cellar. It goes well with, with steak, with pretty big food. I've never disappointed anybody with this wine. And it's named after my father, Nicolas Catena Zapata. Catena is the Italian name, Zapata is the Spanish name, and that's my father's full name. And that's because this is his favorite wine. And every year we spend weeks tasting through all the components of this wine to make the final blend. And oftentimes we taste it with my dad, and then the next day he says, oh, I changed my mind, I want to taste everything again. And so it's a wine that we spent a lot of time and effort. It gets a lot of love, and it's a very important wine for our family because it was our first wine that went out there to compete with some of the best of the world. We did a very historic tasting that Jorge attended, in 2000, where we compared this wine to Cayman Special Selection, Opus One, Chateau Latour, Aubryon, Solaya, and our wine did very well. I was first or second in all the tastings. So so this is a very important wine to our family, and I know that Clinton particularly loves this wine. And so I want to finish actually by showing you this award that we've just gotten. And I want Clinton to get a glass because I need to toast to him. To Clinton, Amy, and actually everybody, because we need to make a toast. Clinton, do you have a glass of wine? Amy? Okay, very good. So a couple months ago in December, before all this craziness, we got an email from Drinks International, which is a very respected magazine in UK. It's one of the two most important, trade magazines in UK. And we got a call saying that we had been selected as one of the top 50 wine brands in the world. And of course, we were thrilled. We thought, oh my God, top 50, that's incredible. And then at some point in January, we got a call from them and they said, actually, you were chosen number one. And then we said, well, is this really a serious, thing? Like, how important is this? And so we did a little research, and actually Jancis Robinson helped me, she's the really famous wine writer, do the research. And basically Wine Intelligence, which is a market research organization in UK, supervised the blind voting of hundreds of wine industry professionals around the world in 48 countries. And so this was really chosen blind by hundreds of people in the industry. And we got the number one spot, our little Catena in Argentina. And I have to say that I'm not sure we'll ever win this position again, but it's kind of incredible. We sort of can't believe it because I can still remember, 20 years ago, being 25 years ago, being at the New York Wine Experience and nobody coming to my table. And here we've been nominated the number one most admired wine brand in the world. But when I think of who do we need to thank, of course we need to thank our team in Argentina, the winemakers, the farmers, the vines, the special place that is Mendoza. But this is an award that also goes to you and to people like Clinton and Amy and Jorge and Maria and Karen who are on the call, who have spent, their working lives telling our story, talking about our wines, organizing tastings for beautiful people like you who are here having dinner. And actually also goes to you, because thanks to you buying the wine and telling your friends about it, we've reached this incredible position that I really sort of can't believe still, but it's there. And we haven't been able to celebrate because the celebration was planned for Pro Wine, which was canceled because of COVID. But I'm not going to give up on celebrating with my friends around the world. And you are my friends. Clinton is my very, very dear friend. Amy, Jorge, all of you here, Karen, Maria on the call, all of you who are going to come to Argentina, and you're my friends now, but we're going to be even more friends after you're in Argentina. And I want to thank you for how much you have helped us, just in our journey of the last 20 years and coming so far. So salud, congratulations to you for your award. Jorge, yes?
Salud, yeah.
Salud.
Salud, salud.
And thank you. Thank you so much for all your support.
Laura, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join Texas for an evening happy hour and share a part of your family's passion and history with us.
Thank you, Clinton. And I want you to tell everybody while I listen the story of
clapping, están aplaudiendo.
Están aplaudiendo. I'm clapping for you. But Clinton, did you tell the sweater story? Have you told them the sweater story?
Have I told them this?
When you lost your luggage and my father lent you his sweater.
Oh, yeah, part of the luggage was the wine I was supposed to bring to dinner the last night, which was more disappointing than the actual clothing. But yes, I had one sweater for the whole trip. It was August, so I really didn't think it was going to be that cold, but it was winter, and it actually almost snowed the week I was there. And my dad gave me a yellow cashmere sweater that is very treasured. So
Yeah, and Clinton, it's a little bit tight because my father is a lot smaller.
yeah, he's tiny. It was too big for him, but it was still a little tight
Yeah,
for me. But it was warm. But it was warm.
Yeah, but Clinton wears it to make me happy, and I love seeing Clinton in that sweater.
Gracias.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pues obviamente no nos vemos a ver hasta después de septiembre, pero espero para el otro primavera o por ahí que
Dale.
caemos allá.
Estoy mandando siempre los mensajitos, Clinton, que me encantan tus mensajes, siempre. Lo más lindo.
Laura, if you want to see everybody else on the call, on the little screen.
Yeah. I do the stop share. Good idea.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, hi everybody. Thank you everybody for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So, is that it? Do I leave now, Jorge?
I'm not sure. The boss is right there. Clinton, you happy?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'll finish up until we have. Well, I guess I can finish now. We have all the wines available.
Okay. All right. Okay. I say
Okay.
bye.
Thank you, Laura. Gracias.
Thank you.
On the table. Okay, ciao, Laura. And so pricing and everything on your table for anything that you'd like to take home, and all the wines available. The one
Okay.
thing that-
Goodbye. I'm cutting everything off now.
Oh, okay. What is in Miami? He's ready to go.
He's ready to go party. Adios, Jorge.
Ciao, Jorge.
Almost done with the bottle.